Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. 2 weeks and counting to the NHL trade deadline. My favorite time of the year. And we are joined here by Kevin Allen. Just in time for the pre-show. We are live. Russ, go ahead.
All right. So finances aside, because, we're just going to push that aside. Major League Baseball and the players have decided on some things. No shift. So that's nice. I agree there shouldn't be a shift, only because they took it to the point when you have somebody who's supposed to be on the right side of the infield all the way on the left side of the infield, that's taking it too far. Like, I get it. People are like, hey, Ted Williams, there was a shift for him. Sure there was, but it wasn't to the degree that this was being done in the game.
Yeah, but let's just say, okay, so basically what they're saying is you can have the second baseman can be right at the bag on second base. He can't be past it. He can be right at the bag, and then you
play up the middle, and that's it. That's right. Far over.
So it's not going to be drastic. It's still going to look.
No, ridiculous. But they were doing some ridiculous things after.
Oh, I know.
So that's one. They're going to institute a pitch clock. That's good, finally. And here's the third one, and this is also going to get clogged up with the finances. Major League Baseball wanted robo-umps right away. Of course, why? Because they save money, and the players won't let them do it until 22, 23. Here's my issue with the robo-umps. Umpires may get things wrong, but umpires also keep the game spicy. If you're wondering or worried about the game being boring, watch how boring it gets with a robo-ump rather than a real ump who players can still argue with and can cause some fireworks on the bench. You take that away from the game, you're now unplugging an entertainment portion of the game.
See, Kev, I was going to make some obscure RoboCop sort of reference here, but
I'm against robo umpires for just the reasons that Russ articulated. Although, I'm surprised, Russ, you're against it. I mean, you and Mike are really officiating centric.
Well, we are, because we get mad at it. I don't like to talk about it, so I guess with the robo ump, I wouldn't be talking about it. But I also understand the value of having an ump in baseball for the fans to get mad at, for the players to get mad at, managers, and it's fun. It is fun. Yeah. It's more fun in baseball than in other sports.
Yeah, I do agree with you. The umpire arguments are a tradition. They've gotten it's more hostile now than it used to be. I mean, it was always guys were getting each other's face, but it was almost theatrics before, and now I think there's some real division that's really got in the center of it. So maybe that's why they're doing it. But
umpiring is a profession, right? So now baseball wants to just basically stomp out a profession, because everybody used to aspire to be a Major League Baseball umpire no matter what level you were at. And some people did actually make it, men and women. Now what are you going to aspire to be? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're just going to be a little league ump the rest of your life, or a college ump the rest of your life?
Well, I mean, ultimately, if this works in the major leagues, it's going to trickle down. There's no worse situation in youth sports than umpires in baseball. It's terrible, and parents treat them poorly, and they get paid either they're volunteers or next to nothing. So it will quickly get down to there if that's what happens. So we could see the end of umpiring as we know it.
Yeah, I mean, please, I need Joe West, Don Denkinger, Angel Hernandez, and Eric Gregg to yell at for being idiots. So let's not.
Yeah, you do, Mike. You really do.
You actually do need it. You do.
Yeah. I don't know if it wasn't for the negative side of sports, I really don't know whether you would enjoy it or not. So,
but I mean, just you think about it. There's guys with that late strike call.
Yeah.
And it's something to talk about. You got guys that just strike three, and they really piss off.
It's funny, but there is a time period, and I don't know what it is, but if you wait a little bit long, like I really like that one where you think, well, where is it? And then he goes, three, where it just comes out of nowhere. That one I like.
No,
That
you,
one's
you
okay,
know
but
who
you know which one I'm talking about.
Yeah. But
you
it's
know
the one that goes 40 seconds.
you know who that bothers the most. That bothers the play-by-play announcers because
I know. Yeah.
Ron Sterling, who's literally blind, and I can't remember the name of the umpire, but the umpire is like strike 3, and then he doesn't do anything physically, and then he goes, and it's like you're standing there, and the player is walking away before he actually makes the call. But like physically, he just says it's strike, and he says it like underneath everything, and that just drives the play-by-play announcers nuts because there's like that 10 seconds where you don't know what the hell's going on.
And here's another factor, Kev. Could the Atlanta Braves survived and won anything in a RoboCop? He's got me saying Robo era. Would they have even won anything?
Yeah, it's going to be hard though. This is not like the line calls in tennis. That replay has worked so well in tennis. My wife is a huge tennis fan, and because of that, I watch tennis as well because my wife has it on, and I just can't believe how that's cleaned that up. It really, we haven't really lost the suspense of it because now you're waiting for the video. It takes you, just a few seconds, but you're waiting and people start to clap, and then all of a sudden there's the call and everybody goes, oh, or, when it's just
I missed it was on the line. Chuck flew up.
Oh yeah, you would miss that. Yeah,
I don't miss that.
So,
we would have been the same.
But it really is going to be interesting to see because, I've seen some discussions on this. I don't know enough about it to get into real life, but there's some discussion about, some umpires will, the late, where it's veering off.
Late break.
The late. Well, I want to call it late break, but it does break actually before it gets to the plate. But it's sort of veering off to the right or left, and some umpires are very good at catching that. I mean, the problem is that we as fans react to where the catcher catches the ball.
Yeah.
Right.
And the problem with that is A, they're framing it, and B, it's moving as they catch it. So like if it's a little bit outside and then crosses the plate, sometimes it is outside.
With RoboArms, framing is gone. So now basically catching now becomes like less of a important position than it used to be too. If you think about it.
Framing the pitch is, the art, it will be lost because in theory, it eliminates that. So
unless you're talking about just about throwing out the base runner, and we know that stolen bases are almost a thing of the past too. So
you're still gonna draft a catcher if he can throw guys out and hit a little bit. But if it's just a defensive catcher now, you're not gonna draft him high at all. You're gonna be like,
Now,
it's going to be a dime a dozen now.
Now, I just want to bring this up. Russ and I were talking about something to do with the, concerts and the music industry. And I had something that I for some reason, I was like, I looked up, I was listening to some music over the weekend and a Robert Plant song came on, and I knew that he was touring, and I've never seen him live. He's touring with Alison Krauss, and I'm sure he's not going to be playing Led Zeppelin stuff, but still, I'd like to see him once. He's in his 70s. I'd like to see him tour once before the end of his career, and he's playing just outside of Rochester, playing in Canandaigua, New York, in June. And I'm like, okay, if the ticket prices are reasonable, I'll go. And everybody's touring now because, it's post-COVID, or at least everybody, knock on wood, post-COVID. And, all these artists who have not been making a lot of money over the last couple of years, this is their chance to make up for that money. And I don't begrudge them that. But when I see a concert and it's a venue of, I think, 15,000, and lawn seats are $150, and seats in the first section are $900. See, I'll live without seeing Robert Plant.
Yeah, but that's your decision anyway. Like, I don't begrudge people. You can charge whatever you want for tickets. Just it's your choice, whether to pay that amount or not. So, I mean, is it too high? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I mean, if they're going to charge that, you just need to vote with your wallet on whether or not that's acceptable or not. And that's what I always say about people who complain about, NHL tickets or mom, that, then don't do it. And if you think it's getting out of hand, if you think salaries are getting out of hand, well, don't buy the third jersey. Don't buy the extra souvenirs. So it's, it's really not that hard. I mean,
actually, hold on, Mike. I want to mention one more thing since you brought up the concert thing, just to kind of help people. I was at a show the other day and it was great. And literally the next night, the show gets canceled a couple, about 70 miles away. Somebody's sick, whether it's COVID or not. I do want to tell people, like, COVID's not over, and be careful about buying tickets too far in advance, because there are going to still be lots of cancellations. There are still plenty of places like in Florida and other places where COVID's still pretty high. So it's really not gone. And I'm not going to just invest my concert money when there's a chance of stuff being canceled. So I'm not going to buy it too early.
I actually have a concert, pseudo concert discussion as well. I just happened to, and it was really just an accident. I wasn't looking for this. It just stumbled upon it. There is a Irish singer that I'm aware of. I think her last name is Sherlock. And she was a sensation. She ended up, she was a Dublin street singer, and ended up on Ellen DeGeneres, and then ended up with a big YouTube following and so forth. And there was a discussion about when she still sings on the streets of Dublin. Now she's, I think she's 16 or 17 now. She was started at 12. And there were two things about this story that I found interesting. Number one, she now, for tips, she now has MasterCard and Visa, so you can swipe your card instead of throwing cash, because nobody carries cash anymore. Right. So she has that, which I had never heard of before. So you can go by and take your Visa card, and there's instead of having just the basket there or the guitar case that you throw money in, you can just rub your Visa and tip. But
I won't trust it. That's
this is the other issue too. The controversy, the reason that story was on my feed is that her tip, the minimum is €3. And people thought that was outrageous. Yeah. And most people most people have the same attitude. I read the comments underneath that I have about these things, and it's not the attitude that Mike has. But if you don't like it, like if you don't like the pregame show, then don't watch. Right. If you don't like what someone's saying on Facebook, don't read it. Right. And if you don't like the $3, well then don't give. But there were some people that were totally outraged by the fact that she set the minimum.
Yeah, I wouldn't be outraged at that. I'm okay with the $3. I just don't want to swipe my card at a weird place like that where swipe card after card. There's going to be some guy off to the side that could steal my number. That's what I'm worried about. Speaking
of that, I wonder about the homeless people. The panhandlers. My wife and I have talked about this for years. Because my kids because they're 30-somethings, they don't carry cash, and my wife and I do, not a lot, but we carry some cash. But I'm getting less and less cash, and we're people who do give to panhandlers. And I said, well, if we go cashless, what are we going to do? And I said that to my kids. My kids, I said, do you guys give that? She goes, well, we just don't anymore. So.
Well, you can get $5 gift cards, I guess.
Yeah. Ask them. Do you take PayPal?
Well,
but at least a gift card, someone could walk into CVS and use it, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I guess you could carry them around with you, but it's isn't it that too big of an effort?
It's a little bit of an effort, but
it shouldn't be, but so I remember one of my favorite panhandling stories. I was with my wife, and I was actually in downtown Chicago, and the guy was panhandling, and he had a dog, and that got to my wife, and she said, do you have food for your dog? And he goes, actually, I don't. And so my wife went to the local store and bought her a bag of dog food and went and dropped it out, and he was just so appreciative of it all.
There's the other kind too, Kev. When I was I get to Detroit because I'm going to do a show for the for the MLB All-Star game at their Fan Fest, and I parked my car at the Joe, and a guy goes, "Hey, do you want me to watch your car?" And of course, I gave the guy money because I'm from New York, and know that if I don't give him money, I'm going to have a couple of flat tires when I come out. That was a while ago, but still, that's the
I had that 1996 Stanley Cup playoffs in Miami. I parked on the street, just going for a morning skate, and the guy walked up to me after I parked there, and he said, "That'll be $25 to watch your car." And I looked at him, and I'm thinking, I got a rental car, and I just took out the $25 and handed it to him. And when I went in, I mentioned it to the security guy, just thinking, well, maybe they want to do something about it. He goes, "You were a smart man." He goes, "It's just better to pay him and, move on. And, it's just a parking fee."
See, the thing is, though, Kev, it's like I don't carry cash. I mean, especially in the world of COVID, I stopped carrying cash because cash can
I know. Well, that was 1996.
Right. But in the current construct, there are people who come up to me, ask me for change. I'm sorry, I don't have any. It's like
right. Yeah. Well, that's the whole issue of the panhandling. But I don't know what those guys do now. What the extortionists. What are the extortionists doing?
There are some businesses that are cash only. They don't because the charges for the
there's a few. Most of them will still take.
Chinese restaurants, a lot of food places that they take.
Yeah, food places.
Well, there's a lot of places that only take credit cards. The new Little Caesars Arena only takes credit cards.
Yeah, no, that's City Field's the same way.
Well, I wonder too. I took a train in Philadelphia, and they only took cash. And I had cash, but I thought, if my kids got on this train, they would not be able to pay.
Yeah, but they did away with the tokens and stuff now. It's all ticket based.
So
okay,
all right, let's get rolling.
Let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, March 7th, 2022.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen, Hockey Buzz.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Eck will be joining us in a few moments. Let's start with this. The Claude Giroux talk continues, and it's starting to get a little more heated. We're 2 weeks away from the deadline, and there have been, reports out there that a lot of teams are going to wait until the last minute because of cap reasons. But Elliot Friedman on Saturday reported interest from the Florida Panthers. And I just pulled up this report on Philadelphia Hockey Now, and this from Sam Carchidi, and this completely uninformed guy named Russ Cohen from said that a deal like Gregory Denisenko, Lucas Carlson, and a first-round pick would potentially be what the Flyers would look for. We know that Friedman and Jeff Merrick, his co-host on 32 Thoughts, had mentioned Owen Tippett, former.
I would take Denisenko over Tippett.
So would I, but it depends on what Florida is offering. But Kev, I mean, right now it seems that, I think it's a foregone conclusion that Giroux is gone.
Yeah, no, for sure that is the case, and I've heard that from multiple people around the league that there's a lot of discussion going on. And what that says is it's two important things. Number one, Colorado may be in on him, and I believe they are still, but they're not necessarily going to get him.
Right.
And Chuck Fletcher and several members of the Flyers organization were seen at the minor league team where Tippett is playing. Right. Tippett is clearly involved in this. So we'll see what they think. What's your read on him? Do you still
I would steer clear. I wouldn't want him in the deal. I would take Logan Huchko instead. I'd say, give me Huchko.
Yeah.
I don't want Tippett. Yeah. I'll tell you why. Tippett is a guy that his whole game revolves around his shot. Whether he's close to the net, whether he's going to shoot on the left, shoot on the right, somebody's got to feed it to him. Now, he is pretty good in the crease at times, pretty good. And he's gotten to be a better passer, and his skating's gotten a little better, and he's got some toughness. But again, I go back to some of the hierarchy on the Flyers thinking that, well, Owen Tippett is good because he's a former first-rounder and he's tough. And that mentality, I want the faster guy in Logan Huchko, who is scoring better than Tippett right now in Charlotte. and maybe not points per game wise, but overall, and got out of college, 4 years in college, we'll run through a brick wall for any coach. Not saying Tippett won't, but I'm saying there's more upside with him than there is with Tippett. At Tippett now, we're at a leveling point.
But
that's where we are. We're going Tippett.
But this is the question I have. If Tippett is the second piece in the deal and not the primary piece, if he's like in your the deal that you said, like Denisenko, if it's Denisenko and Tippett, then I don't think that the Flyers would have a problem. If it's Tippett and Carlson, then they're not
then I'd have a problem.
Right.
And that's what we don't know.
Well, and I've started to look at this, and we've had this discussion before. And I know we have just a slight disagreement on this, but ever since Troy Terry came in and did well, I've started to look up and the number of people, and when you're 23 years old, it's just less likely that you're going to suddenly find your game. I mean, it does happen, but not all that often.
Tippett got called down, Kev, and he was playing with Huberdeau for a while, trying to spark him.
Yeah. But he's beyond his 23rd birthday now. And, I mean, when he's been up, he's looked okay.
Right.
But,
he was supposed to be like a 30-goal scorer, 25 to 30 in the NHL. This is a complete leveling off point with him. And if the Flyers have so much interest in him, even as a third piece, I would say get a different prospect, one with upside, because again, you got to pay Tippett too. The Flyers don't have much cap space, and he's an RFA. And like Mike told me offline, well, you don't have to pay him a lot. No, but you still have to pay him. That's my basic point.
I think that it's okay to the Red Wings, I think, have some interest in Tippett as well.
Hey, folks, StreamYard just crashed here, so we're waiting for everybody to come back in here. Hey, we just had StreamYard crash on us. So
yeah, just when I was coming in. Oh man.
Yeah. We'll see if we can get Kevin back.
We're still going though, huh?
Yeah. It just booted everybody, and but it seems to be coming back here. So let's keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah. All right. When I was coming in, yeah.
But
thank you guys for my life is just friggin' unbelievable. Anyway, we're good.
But okay, we're talking about the Giroux rumors.
Yeah, that's a good one to start with.
And the report over the weekend from Elliot Friedman and what the reported return would be from Florida. And Russ and I were just talking about. There's Kev. Yeah, that was odd, Kev. It was a StreamYard crashed on us.
Okay.
But so continue what you were saying about.
The Red Wings were interested in him as well. I think with a little expanded, but I think they see him as they're just kind of collecting, young prospects.
Yeah, they can take a flyer on him because he's a bottom six guy for them. If he works out, great. If not, we've got a lot of guys. The Flyers can't afford to blow it and have Tippett in a trade and have him be what he is, like a 10-goal guy. Like they can't afford to do that.
But
I do love what Yzerman's doing, though, Kev. Like, he picks up Ulevy off of waiver. This is a former top 5 pick. He didn't have success in Vancouver. He really didn't give him a lot of an opportunity in Florida. He could be a 4 or 5 defenseman.
I'll tell you, he's not.
They'll give him the opportunity, Russ.
I know, but he's not. He's not going to be that anymore.
Maybe not.
Right here.
Give him the chance.
Yeah, no, Mike is right. On this, he's a number 5 pick. You just bring him in, you see what you got.
I don't disagree with that, but when he's saying maybe be a 4 or 5, you're just hoping he can stay at the NHL level. Period.
No, you're just making your declarative statement.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. No, but and I think about this. So, I mean, first of all, you haven't mentioned who you're talking about, so I get it. You were talking before, so I don't know.
Owen Tippett.
Owen Tippett.
Yeah. All right, I apologize. I missed that. Yeah. Yeah, I know, well, of course, it wasn't it wasn't a big like breaking thing that, because I mean, how many people were watching Owen Tippett play at Lehigh Valley? It was just like the most absurd thing in the world.
There were more people in the press box than there were at the stands, probably.
Yeah, like, it's like, no, if Fletcher's trying to be like, coy about this, it wasn't the way to do it. Like it.
Why would you be coy right now? You're trying to.
I know. You don't have to be. Right.
Trying to generate a market. I mean, if
maybe Mike, maybe you're right. Maybe like this is maybe I'm not thinking deep enough. Maybe you're absolutely right on that one.
Yeah, a week ago we were saying Colorado was the only team that could make the deal, and now all of a sudden we're talking about Florida.
Well, the weird thing, Florida. I mean, Florida. I talked about Florida before with him as a possibility. First of all, like we talked about, Gudis is there. Gudis and Giroux are tight. We talked about this a couple last week.
Yeah, we did mention that. Yeah.
And I know, and they were both part of a leadership core in Philadelphia, for sure. So they know each other. Gudis is going to say nothing but great things about him. Giroux is a great fit in Florida. Obviously, he's a great fit anywhere. Like he is, like you said, Mike, probably like one of the better trade deadline people we've had in a long time. That's going into a situation where he plays good offense. He can kill penalties. He's good defensively. He wins faceoffs like crazy. He can play either the wing or the center. He also has a history of scoring big goals at big times in playoff type situations. He's got a really nice, he's not Briere, but he's got a playoff type thing about him, I think, that is there. Briere is probably the best ever at that, in Philadelphia or anywhere. But yeah, I think Florida makes some sense. I think Tippett is definitely one of those guys that is expendable to them.
Well, he's definitely expendable. I mean, there's no.
He's expendable. They have played him a lot this year, though. They've tried to give him some chances. At the beginning of the year,
I was saying to Kevin, they played him with Huberdeau and got no results.
Beginning of the year, they definitely gave him a shot. There's no question that they wanted to see what they had.
Well, what I wonder when it comes to the Flyers and when it comes to Giroux is whether, there's a potential, especially with a team like Florida and Colorado, who are looking not only for forwards but defensive depth, whether a guy like Braun would be included in a deal with Giroux, whether it's
I don't think so. I don't think so, Mike, because again, here's the other part of that. The reason I don't think so is because I still think there are other teams interested in Giroux. The Rangers aren't sending 2 or 3 scouts a game just to scout Justin Braun. They're going to make an offer for Giroux. I guarantee it. Now, whether it's accepted, that's a whole other thing. But
the Rangers have to scout Claude Giroux. I mean, do they? I mean,
yes, you have to scout Claude Giroux. Yes.
How deeply do you have to scout Claude Giroux?
I'll tell you why. Because if you're giving up 3 assets, you've got to decide what your Gerard Gallant wants to do with him, whether he's a left wing or a center for them, and you have to decide, can he fill that role? Now I got to look at him with the deployment that Gallant is going to give him. So yes, you have to scout him.
Plus, 2 factors have made Claude Giroux more important.
Okay.
Number one, Dallas Stars have gotten themselves in a playoff spot. So Pavelski, it looks like he's going to be off the table. And number 2, the Sharks are making a really big bid to re-sign Hurdle.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden there aren't as many big dogs out there to bring in. So that makes the Giroux even more valuable, because if you get him, not only you're helping your team, but now that 2 of the other contenders aren't going to get the players they wanted. So.
Now, the other part, Kev, though, Dallas has been living in Philly. So my guess is they're going after one of the defensemen, whether it's Ristolainen or Braun, or maybe even Konecny in conjunction with one of those defensemen and a bigger type trade, because I know Philly's looking for guys with term. They've been living there. So if they're not going to get Giroux, I have to have a feeling they're looking for something bigger.
Well, Russ, I would gamble it's Ristolainen, because we look at Dallas and their penchant for Finns.
Yeah.
They have Heiskanen, they have Rupe Hintz, and the Lindell. And the whole thing with Dallas right now is the fact with Klingberg is they don't want to sign Klingberg for $8 million, which is close to Heiskanen, but they probably could get Ristolainen signed for what he's looking for, around 6.5. That would fit in their structure, but Klingberg at 8 doesn't. So that might be a move where they make that move to help their playoff chances, and also they can re-sign him before the summer.
Right. No, I agree. We have Christopher in the chat room who's a Florida fan, which is always great to see. Good to see a Florida fan. And he's bringing up some really good on-spot points about Tippett in Florida, things I've been hearing similar to. Like he said, last year he was awesome with Ubi. He's still young. He just seems to get stuck in his north-south style. Totally coming. And then Tippett seems to want to pass more these days. He's played like one game this year where he was like, I'll shoot it more, which was great to see. If you get Tippett for his shot and you tell him to shoot, Florida just want him to fill out his game more. These are all on point.
And that's what I would mention before you got on. He is passing more because he's not scoring. That's the only way he stays at the NHL level now.
Right.
Which is more of a complimentary guy than a shoot first guy, which is what they thought when he was coming out of junior. He was going to be a shoot first guy.
Yeah. So it's interesting how different he is than his dad, right? Like it's like when you see like Tippett, or not his dad, his namesake, not Dave Tippett,
Yeah, and Dave Tippett was
they're
defensive forward than anything.
Yeah, right. Like how Dave Tippett was, just like a complete, and he's exactly opposite, right? But I think that when you see, I could see those two getting together. I would be very afraid to trade with Florida if I was anybody, because Florida seems to get the better ends of these deals. They just really do. And
well, I mean,
interesting situation to see. Like
they did in the Buffalo deal.
And they did in the Calgary deals, I thought.
Well,
for sure.
Yeah. I mean, well, but see, the thing was, and we called it. And I swear, I know that I was advocating Toronto trading for Sam Bennett last year, and the cost for Sam Bennett ended up being 2 second-round picks, because I thought Sam Bennett was an undervalued commodity. He goes to Florida, and he's exactly what I thought he was going to be. He has thrived there, along with the addition of Reinhart and other guys who have sort of come to the forefront. That team is scary as all hell right now. And if they add a Giroux, and if they add, maybe some depth on defense, they're just as scary as Tampa Bay to come out of the East. I mean,
I still think they're better in Tampa, but
I don't know. That's still a pick'em series.
I think I think they are better than Tampa, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be a pick'em series.
I mean, Tampa, the playoff experience. Tampa defending Stanley Cup champion, playoff experience, that definitely plays into it, right?
But here's the
other thing I can say this too, though, Mike. There's another team that's involved that no one's talking about with Giroux, and that's Calgary. And I've heard this several times over the last day or so. Trying to chase it down to be able to.
What could they possibly offer?
Don't know.
Well, they have good Connor Zary and Pelletier, and they have some pretty decent prospects. But the question is, I don't know if does Giroux fit the Daryl Sutter mantra? I mean,
he could play any style, but I don't think he would enjoy it. But he could play it.
But here's the thing about Calgary that people
didn't they give up their first round pick?
They did.
They did.
Yeah. I mean, I thot the first thing
like a match anyhow.
Yeah.
Well, no. I mean, I talked to somebody in Calgary who said that that they were trying like the Dickens to make this happen, and the reason is because they feel that their center position, is still kind of iffy beyond the top, beyond their top line. Well, and if you lose, say where they were to lose for some reason, Johnny Gaudreau, would they be in a Vegas type situation where they have really? I mean, Monahan's step back has taken so many steps back this year.
Well, Florida doesn't have their first round pick either. If there's a first round pick in that deal, it's probably a 2023 first.
It'll be a 23, yeah.
And then Calgary would be in the same boat. But
can you? But I don't know if you can. Yeah, I guess.
I don't. I mean, I'm with you, Kev. If you don't have a first round pick, you would think that Philadelphia would want a first round pick right away in this deal.
Yeah,
one that's a year down the road.
But if the prospects are good enough,
because
you're getting a first round pick from Florida or Calgary, it's going to be late anyway.
Yeah, it's a late pick anyhow. So you get better prospects.
If you got a prospect that you really like and you know what you're getting, so
I want to answer
a question.
I want to answer a question in the chat room because Anthony Kennard asks, "What if Owen Tippett becomes the next Morgan Geekie?" He can't, because Geekie wasn't really ever given the chance that even Tippett had this year, and Geekie was a better all-around player to start with a better hockey IQ. So Tippett was living off of his toughness and his shot, has rounded out his game a little more. Geeky just really needed a chance and had to get a little faster. Tippett had to improve in more areas than that.
Now here, I couldn't wait to talk about this on the show today because the race in the West is getting interesting and more interesting by the day. We saw Vegas win last night. Dallas won 2 important games on the weekend. They're at 67 points. And on Saturday, who beat the Edmonton Oilers? That's right.
Canadians. Yeah.
The Montreal Canadiens did.
You're beating a lot of people lately.
Oh, I know.
But that's a bad loss. Actually.
That's a bad loss.
It's a terrible loss. It's a terrible loss. And, no, listen, I mean, the race over there it's a 3-team race, in my opinion, it's a 4-team race in a way. Vegas, Edmonton, Nashville, and Vancouver, I think, are battling for 2 spots. I think those 4 teams are battling for 2 spots.
It actually is right now. It's like 7 teams fighting over 5 spots. Because
I feel like the other teams, though, when you look at them, I think LA is going to make it. I actually think Dallas is now going to make it. Like I'm starting to feel really confident about them when I watch them play.
Well,
I think Nashville has problems. Vancouver had problems, but they're catching up. Vancouver might be playing better than any of them, but they're and they might look like the most like a playoff team right now. Vegas last night. Did you watch that game last night? I watched a lot of that game last night against Ottawa. They gave up 40 shots in that game to Ottawa. Vegas and then they had an unbelievable goalie performance.
Well, that's what it takes sometimes.
It takes that, I know, but a lot of that is because Ottawa, while they work hard and they have some good strong players, not necessarily snipers. Like you're not looking at like a ton.
No, but they have some talent. I mean,
but they don't. But if they had a couple snipers, that would have put a couple of those chances away last night because they really were. I mean, that game was. He wins.
You know how many points they got?
Wins it with 5 seconds to go.
That's all that matters. They got the 2 points.
I know.
I know. They still had. You're looking for this fall that I don't believe is going to happen.
It might not, but the reality is that they're not a strong team right now. Like if you watch that game last night, they're not a team that should be like winning anything. I mean, they were playing a Senators team that really had nothing to lose at home in Vegas, and
they're not a strong team, but all they have to do is hang on, and that's all we've been talking about is they've got to win like 2 out of every 4 games.
No, all Washington has to do is hang on. Vegas is in a battle for their lives. They're like only 2 points or 3. They're only 2 points ahead of a playoff spot.
I know they're not in the battle for their lives.
That's the battle for your life. You're not hanging on. Then we've got to outperform the teams catching up to you, because the other teams have.
You're all in on Dallas. Like Dallas is guaranteed to make the playoffs.
I'm not all in on them, but I watched them this weekend. I mean, I just feel like when you look right now, you just look at a team at this point, and maybe I'm wrong. Kevin, you correct me, please. If I'm wrong, but when I look at teams this time, you try to ask yourself, does that look like a playoff team that I'm watching play?
Well, if
when I watch Dallas, I say yes.
If Jason Robertson scores a hat trick every game, they're going to make.
Well, no, of course. I mean, that's a given.
But here's what I'm looking at in terms of not just the playoff race, but what we're going to deal with 2 weeks from now, because obviously we're all focused on the deadline. John Klingberg is not getting traded. Joe Pavelski is not getting traded.
Right.
If they're in the race, Dallas might add. They may not.
That's correct.
I agree.
So, I mean, that's one thing. Anaheim, I mean, even though they're 3 points out of a wild card spot, they've played the most games of any team in the Western.
Yeah, they're the ones that are falling out of it.
They don't look. I didn't put them in there.
All of a sudden, unless they sign Lindholm, talk Nick Delorier, talk Josh Manson, talk Rickard Rakell. All of them are on the market conceivably. Now, maybe not all of them get moved.
Right.
But, if all of a sudden Dallas is off the market and Anaheim is on the market, then then Pat Verbeek would not be smart if he didn't explore moving all those guys, because you never know what you're going to get.
Right.
Kevin, thoughts? Sorry.
Well, I have a lot.
I know.
I mean, Vegas certainly. When you're only 2 points up, you're in a race. The only thing we're talking here is you think they're not going to make it, and the 3 of us think they will make it. I mean, but no one's not going to say they're not fighting.
Right,
they have to fight. That's the way it is. out there. So that's the only difference. I mean, you look at that roster and you look at the success this team's had in the past, and DeBoer is their coach, and you think, well, they're going to make it. That's how I feel. Now, we could be wrong, but they're certainly fighting. Anaheim wants to sign Lindholm, but all of a sudden you're starting to hear that, and I'm not surprised at this. Pat Verbeek came out of the Steve Eisman school. Steve Eisman does not like long-term contracts, doesn't like those big, long deals. I hear that Lindholm wants a long-term deal. And maybe Verbeek is in that school as well. And if they can't re-sign him, that's going to be a real interesting player in the marketplace.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
Yeah, because I think, he could really help somebody.
I think we're going to see a last-minute standoff type situation with that one. I have a feeling we're going to see, like, coming up, we're going to hear about Lindholm negotiating, and then we're going to hear either it's done or it's not done. And because they're going to want it clearly out there he's in market if he is.
Well, okay.
Right?
Off the top of my head, so now we've got Lindholm, Hurdle, Forsberg, all negotiating right before the deadline.
But a lot of times this happens. This isn't like
this is pretty standard.
They're three totally different kind of situations, though.
But they'll call it early. You know what I mean? Everybody will say, look, we're going to need some time, so we got to get this done by 24 hours before,
right?
Or else. So,
yeah, I mean, I now, like, as far as the other one you mentioned there, you mentioned Lindholm, Hurdle, and who's the other player you're talking about? Forsberg. Someone wrote in the chat room, if Nashville falls out of it, Forsberg's on the trade market, and I don't quite buy that one. I don't think they're going to.
I'm with Eck on that.
They were optimistic about getting him signed, but he's not signed.
Yeah,
right. You're right about that.
This was now a week ago.
Yeah,
and I don't know that they're. I think he's pretty dug in on his, pay me like Roman Josi. So I think they thought they could get him to take, fewer years, but
yeah,
I'm not sure of that, but it hasn't gone as well as they thought it was going to go. I think a week or so ago when they had sort of made up their mind. The problem is, it's who's affecting these negotiations is Duchesne and Johansson.
I know
they've paid those guys big money, and obviously Duchesne's playing very well this year, and I guess Johansson's been better too, although not to the extent that Duchesne has played.
Yeah,
but because of them, they're gun shy. And now they've got Josi, they've got both those guys. And what are they going to get out of Duchesne and Johansson moving forward? Like they don't, is this now going to be the new, revamped Duchesne, or is he going to go back to where he was last season? So I think they're just a little concerned. Although I don't think they should be with Forsberg. His level of consistency has been, pretty well documented.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I learned something on Saturday when the Canucks played in Toronto. I talked to a Vancouver reporter that I know and asked him about the latest, all the stuff that has come out over the last week or two about JT Miller. And he said he doesn't think that they're trading JT Miller. He thinks that, if they're going to trade Miller, it might be over the summer. It might be before next year's deadline. But right now, Vancouver is still within shouting distance of the playoffs. Yeah. And since he's got term and since he's playing so well and since he's making $5.25 million, that he doesn't think that Miller is the guy that they move. He did say he thought there was a better chance that they move Brock Besser because Besser has a qualifying offer that's north of $7 million. And then he's 1 year away from unrestricted free agency. So you might see a Besser deal, Kev, if it's a team that has cap space that can sign him to an extension. But whereas Vancouver probably can't sign him to an extension because the Hughes deal and the Pettersson deal and other deals like that.
Yeah, I think they've decided. I said before, and I'll stick to this. I think Rutherford has explored everybody. I think he has got a real good handle on what his options are, what he can get for everyone.
Right.
And now he's making his decision, and I think the decision is going to be based on the fact that he has arbitration rights and he's going to land big on an arbitration as well. So I think Besser now, as much as I think that could be disastrous as well, I think he's a really good player, but they'll get a lot out of him too. So but that takes a big chunk of money off the the payroll. So that makes sense. And
the only caveat though, like you were saying though, with Kev, for Besser, is the team that's getting them is going to have the space to sign them.
Yeah. I mean, they don't have to do it now; they can do it in the UFC.
No, but they're going to have the future cap space. Yeah.
But I mean, and you can't say it's a leverage play, because Besser more than likely is not going to a contender, because a contender doesn't have the cap space.
No.
He's probably going to a team like, I use the example of New Jersey, because we've heard the Pavel Zacha rumors going the other way to Vancouver. It might make sense for New Jersey because they got all the cap space in the world. They could get Besser signed on a 5 or 6 year deal, and it would make sense for them.
They love him. And the question, and when I talked to people about that too, they said that when in talking to New Jersey, people I talked to in New Jersey said it was they were much more open to trading Besser than they were Miller. Like, like you guys are saying there, basically, along those lines that, the talk is not.
Because he fills a specific need. Like Miller fills and checks off a lot of different things. He fills a goal scoring need that they've had for years.
Right.
Now, here's
one of the interesting names, though, Mike, that's not going out too. And this guy is a UFA. And with all the issues that they have, with all the players they have to sign in the next couple of years, Tyler Motte is an interesting player in Vancouver.
Tyler Motte. Sorry,
I'm sorry. Ugh. You say Motte, I say Motte. Let's call the whole thing off. All right, so
I like
Tyler Motte.
I like their applesauce.
Yes, Tyler Motte is an intriguing player. He's had some pretty nice statistics in his career. Not like majorly, but not terribly. Like he's got 35 goals and 26 assists in 250 games. He's one of those guys that's like, okay, he's a typical third, fourth liner, but he had, given every once in a while when he gets put into a situation where he has to play up, like he plays up with other players, he shows some real style of like,
he can do that for a short time. Yeah.
Maybe this guy can play with skilled guys, and we talked about that many times, Russ, in the past, that there's some guys that when they put with skilled guys have another level that you don't always.
I mean, I don't think I would put Motte on my third line, but as a fourth liner, if I have a fourth line that's not a grind line, Motte could definitely help you. He can play up a little bit, but not for a long period. But
if you're talking about low salaried guys who can play in your top 9, and I don't know if $3 million is low salary, but Andrew Kopp's name has been mentioned a lot. But Nick Paul for Ottawa is a guy.
Yeah, those guys are definitely out there.
Yeah, I mean
Motte's 1.2 million. So
right, and
it's like you're talking about a really and it's funny. There are people out there that feel higher than you guys do on him. I don't know. Just from talking to people, I get that sense.
You know why they feel high on him? Because he's not making much, and it's easy to plug in. I get that.
Yeah, and now I was going to bring up this name and Anthony and the Yarncroke for Seattle, who's making $2 million, who played for Nashville for forever. And he's a UFA.
Now he's a better player than Tyler Motte.
Right. So, but switching to the East, and like I said, there is no playoff race there. Really, it's over with. But it's a question of who finishes where in terms of wild card and top 3 in each division. I have to say and now it's 12 games. In the last 12 games, I just wrote about this on my Hockey Buzz column. The Maple Leafs are under 500. They've averaged 4 goals against per game. Jack Campbell once again struggled in a 6-4 loss to the Canucks, a game that they were leading after 2 periods. Their defense is below average. They're scoring like crazy, but Kev, they can't depend on Austin Matthews to score 2 goals a game, and then when he does, still lose the game. So, Kyle Dubas talked to the media on Friday, and he had no other choice other than to say, "Well, I back my
goalies." Yeah,
because there are no options out there. It's like if Fleury isn't going to get traded, then Braden Holtby isn't exactly an upgrade over Jack Campbell and Mrazek. And the question I had, and I didn't get a chance to ask him this, is okay, then why are you going to waste assets on improving your defense when you're not even sure that your goaltending is good enough?
Yeah,
it's like remodeling your house when the foundation is crumbling.
Yeah, it's someone brought this up to me again, the second person, about Ken Holland's situation. And he said, I keep reading that. And he says, I think you even wrote it, which I did. The Oilers need to get goaltending. Well, who is it that you think they're going to get? He said, there's nobody available.
Right.
And he said, it's nice for you guys to criticize them, but sometimes you don't have the options that you think you do. But I did find it humorous because I've been there before, and I bet all of us have, really. Steve Simmons said he talked to one good source who said that Marc-Andre Fleury has already told the Blackhawks that he doesn't want to be traded. Mm-hmm. And he talked to another source. Then he says another source told him he is going to be traded.
That doesn't shock me either.
So, and that has happened to me where I've had two people that I really trust, and it simply comes down to where they're getting their information from.
Right.
Yeah. No, exactly. And in my experience, at least, for what that's worth, when you have two things like that you're hearing, like I'm hearing both as well, you start to believe the thing that is less sexy, that he's not getting traded.
Right.
That you're going to, the rumors spread all the time about, people love to talk about where Marc-Andre Fleury could go and things like that. But people don't, it's not like a great, fantastic thing to say Marc Fleury's staying there. And I find that, so in this situation, that if I'm getting both sides, my gut instinct would tell me to go with that he has probably said he's not going anywhere.
Well, plus it fits his personality,
right, it does.
As well. And, he's won before. And all that stuff. But Toronto's really become Minnesota. And again, there's a lot of hockey still to be played. So let's not get too. But it's always interesting when the teams that have played well suddenly go south for a while. Yeah. And then you start to wonder, what's going on in Toronto. Now, Mike, you've done a good job documenting since early December how Campbell has struggled.
Right.
And now this has become a real problem. And, they can score a lot to overcome a lot of defensive problems, but not in the playoffs. That's a little harder. So,
no, and the thing that's made it worse, obviously, is the injury to Jake Muzzin. And what they've done is, they can't play TJ Brody and Morgan Riley 28 minutes a night. So they've split them up onto their top two defensive pairings. But the problem is they don't have a 3 and a 4 to play with them. So they're playing kids like Liljegren or Sandin up in the lineup. They're making mistakes. And it's just not a feasible situation. And I've been tracking, and I will continue to track until the 21st, what defensemen that they may go after, whether it's Sherrod or Ristolainen or whoever. But if they're showing these warts right now, Kyle Dubas, is he going to give up a first-round pick and something, or one of their top prospects for a rental defenseman when they don't even know whether their goaltending can withstand I mean, we don't know whether Dubas's job is on the line. A lot of people think it is. A lot of people think it's not. And really what they do at the deadline might be reflective of that. If he thinks he's got a future, then he can withstand a 6th straight first round loss.
But don't you think, Mike, I mean, you've been there for a long time. Mm-hmm. I just can't imagine them not going out and getting a defenseman.
I agree.
I don't think there's going to be any discussion about, we don't have the goaltending, so we might as well not do it. I think
it's the question of what defenseman, because there was an article today in The Athletic regarding PK Subban. And I sort of laughed. I think it was Pierre LeBrun interviewed Tom Fitzgerald. And, PK Subban is a serviceable defenseman now, but he's not the defenseman he was 3 or 4 years ago. And he's making $9 million. So even if you filter that contract through they retain 50% and you filter another 25% off of them, he's still over $2 million. And he's not even that in terms of a defenseman. So I don't know who in their right mind is trading for PK Subban at $2.25 million.
No, I don't see that either.
I don't see it either. And I think that he's not the kind of defenseman they need.
They need a stay-at-home, tough defensive defenseman. That's why I've advocated a Ristolainen or maybe a Sherratt, even though I think they could get a better value than the inflated value of Sherratt right now.
Well, Sherratt is a first-round pick and a prospect. So
that's a lot, and how much better is Sherratt than some other guys who you don't have to give up a first round draft pick for. Like in reality.
Well, that's what Mike is saying. They have to decide that because
I don't think that they need to give up a first round draft pick to get what they need to fill. Like this is not.
Well, okay.
This is not a first round draft pick.
Is Sherratt better than Justin Braun? Yes. Is he?
Yes, but it would cost so much less, Mike.
Better. He's better.
Yeah, is Justin Braun?
Right, so that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, if Justin Braun if it costs a third round pick to get Justin Braun and a number 1 and something to get Sherratt, then maybe Justin Braun is a better value. He's not a number 4 defenseman. He's a 5-6.
You haven't watched him enough, Mike.
You haven't.
I've watched him enough.
No, you haven't. And also remember, he has been a number 4 defenseman in his career.
Yes.
And he also
5 years
still has those skills. And in the playoffs, those aged, wily veteran type defensemen can be incredibly valuable. Like even if you're just have them out there for the last 2 minutes of a game when you're holding the 1-goal lead, those guys they just have the tricks. They know what they're doing. And that to me is, I don't know. I think I would.
But there is something to be said for the fact that Sherratt was just in the Stanley Cup final not that long ago. So.
No, that's true. I mean, and that's a huge thing. I mean, the goalie panic in Toronto. I don't think that's pointing towards picking up a goalie. And
I'm going to ask you this, Mike, because and I can chime in on this one too, Kev. What made you feel better about Ron Hainsey back in the day than Justin Braun now?
I didn't feel good about Ron Hainsey.
That's true. I'll back Mike on that. He did not feel good about Ron Hainsey.
I didn't feel good about Ron Hainsey. And Ron Hainsey
produced, but he didn't produce for them.
When was the last time you felt good about anyone? So
it must have been a platonic trade, Mike. I remember you feeling really good.
I feel real good about that. But and Russ, Ron Hainsey, I when they made that acquisition, I'm like, Ron Hainsey was supposed to be on the bottom pairing, and he ended up on the top pairing with Morgan Rielly. That's how bad their defense was, and that's
I will say this, Mike. You love the Muzzin trade. You did.
Yes,
I remember that. That's the last trade I remember you feeling really good about. That was the trade.
I did love that.
And I thought the TJ Brody signing was good. So
like that more than I did.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, that's 2 defensemen in your top 4 that I've had, and those are guys who were legitimate top 4 defensemen. Ron Hainsey and Justin Braun and Ilya Labushkin are not.
Remember, you also have to remember there'll be 5 teams going after those 2 guys.
Sure,
and the Leafs are one of them.
I get that, Russ.
Yeah, but there's a lot of defensemen. I mean, it really is kind of a buyer's market. I mean, Giordano can be out there.
I'd go after Giordano. Giordano would be, in my mind, would be a good fit because he would play with Brody, and then probably you'd have to put Muzzin on his offside or Rielly on his offside to play with Muzzin. But at least you'd have a top 4 of legitimate top 4 defensemen.
Right. Yeah, it is funny that GMs like moving guys to their offside more than coaches do.
Right.
Kevin, what have you heard about anything about Zadina maybe?
Well, Zadina he's out there. His name's out there. I don't think they're actively shopping, but I think people have looked and saw that he's struggling and see a guy that, well, maybe we could do what Detroit is doing with their, waiver pickup yesterday, where you're getting a guy that was a high pick that maybe hasn't made it. And I don't think I think the Red Wings would trade Zadina, but I don't think they're set on trying to, trade him yet. But I think, in the off season when they're really going to make a bid to get a veteran defenseman to play in their top 4. And I think they would use Zadina as a chip in order to do that. They want someone in their 20s, in his prime, with some experience who can come in there and help that defense. I mean, defensively, they've played very poorly this season. When you look at the Red Wings over the last 18 games, they've averaged over 3 point. And actually, over the last 20 games, they've averaged over 3.5 goals per game. They're scoring. But defensively, they're last in dangerous scoring chances given up. They just give up a ton of scoring chances, and they want to, try to fix that.
Yeah. I want to throw a couple other things out there, Mike.
Go ahead.
I heard something over the weekend about, Florida really might need to go for a backup goalie. They aren't sure that Spencer Knight's ready for this.
If you're depending on Jonas Johansson, then yes, you're right.
Right, and I think there is also a really big push for them to finish first in the division. It means a lot to them for many reasons. Obviously, you can avoid Tampa. That's big. Second, but the other thing about that is you can get another game in your own building, which means a ton to them. Like that, having a home ice advantage.
Right.
Through, maybe to win the Eastern Conference point total, having the home ice advantage through all that is a huge thing for them. And
these will be games that people actually show up for, like unlike most of the regular season.
Right. And they know that, and it matters a lot to them. So giving away points with a backup goalie that's not doing it for you is an issue. I mean, and the name I heard that I put in the rumor chart too was Corpusalo, and the thinking on that is it makes too much sense. Like,
well, Zito knows him.
Zito obviously from Columbus. Yeah. Zito was a big part of getting Corpusalo there in the first place.
Sure.
So they're gonna push Spencer Knight to the AHL.
He has been in the AHL a little bit, like he's been
a little bit, but I mean,
just the idea is
brought him up, yeah.
No, I mean, the idea here is, do you think that how is he going to get you those points? They really are looking for that short term.
I'll tell you what, I think this would be a short term mistake, because if you do that, you're playing around with Spencer Knight a little bit. And if all of a sudden Bob goes off the rail in a year or two and you need Spencer Knight and he gets pissed off because he got sent down when he doesn't need to be sent down and they go on a cup run and win a cup, you might not be able to re-sign Spencer Knight.
Yeah, you're undercutting his confidence.
Yep.
For one thing, but if he's not ready, he's not ready. I get that.
He's not ready. He's not ready. If it's going to mean extra playoff games, you might just have to.
You have to be very careful about that.
You have to be careful with it. I think
because you're banking on Bob now, who could be in a year bad again.
But the other problem with this whole situation is Bob isn't going anywhere for a while.
Well, but he doesn't have to be the starter forever, though.
He doesn't have to be the starter forever, but that is something that Spencer Knight is aware of every day of his, every day he's there. So already signing him is going to be tricky.
You know what, though? I will tell you this, Zach. A goalie like Spencer Knight doesn't think about Bob's contract or how long he might be there. He just cares about his game, because he's smart enough to know there'll be a point where Bob's contract is not the worst goalie contract out there when the league gets back on track and salaries go up.
Yeah.
And if he plays his game and Bob doesn't, he'll be in there regardless.
I mean, Spencer Knight's put up respectable numbers in the American Hockey League: 7-3, 255 goals against, .917 save percentage. He's under 900 in the NHL. His goals against is over 3. So I get the point that he hasn't performed up to expectations, but he did perform well in the playoffs last year.
All of a sudden, they threw him in the playoffs, no problem last year. Right. That was fine.
Yeah, but that's gosh, how many times have we seen that? I'm not, goalies are.
You're playing around with a future number one. You're not playing around with a guy that you're like, hey, let's send him to the A for 2 or 3 years because we think he could be a good goalie here. They got this goalie with the intention that he will be their number one goalie. That's a guy you don't generally play around with too much in the AHL. That's just my feeling with goalies.
Yeah, I get that.
If he was down here the whole time, fine. But he wasn't. And like Mike said, they used him in the playoffs too. It becomes trickier when you do it this way.
No, I think he understood completely that that why he was down the AHL, and I think he welcomed it. It was this kind of thing like
he's not welcoming it, getting sent down and missing the playoffs and potentially a Stanley Cup run.
I agree. If they make this trade, it's a sticky.
He will be pissed off if they make this trade.
Now, if for example, because Corpusalo is making I think like $2.8 million. And, Vancouver, Florida is not exactly, they don't have a ton of cap space. So, Kekalainen could retain 50%. But if they went for a cheaper option, somebody like Craig Anderson, who's played well for the Sabres since coming back from the injury, and you want a veteran guy who can step in and win you a game here or there, that might be a cheaper option for them, and something that they, doesn't provide cap issues, doesn't provide, they give up a 7th round pick for him probably, and Buffalo would do it. That might be an option too, instead of
okay. Yeah, let me move on. Get a couple quick things because we have like 2 minutes here. So, the other next quick hit, Kevin, for you, Arturi Lehkonen and the Nashville Predators. I heard this a couple times, and it is a fascinating one to me.
I'm sorry. Now is what now?
Arturi Lehkonen and the Nashville Predators. That is a I think I've heard this rumor a little bit over the last couple of days. We talked about it a while back. I think
I'm not sure with that. But I guess it makes some sense. But I have not heard that. So
okay, fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, Lekkonen's making $2.3 million. Nashville is not doesn't have exactly have a ton of cap space, and he's not a rental. He's an RFA with arb rights. So unless you're prepared to give up something and then walk away from his deal or sign him for $3 million, which I don't think Nashville would want to do, maybe Nashville would trade something back to Montreal that they don't want that would mitigate the value of the contract, like a Nick Cousins or something like that. But I don't know.
Yeah.
And also Nashville has gone in one direction the last month. They've dropped. I'm not saying that it's they're dropping.
Yeah, and they that's it, Mike. And then they also desperately want to make the playoffs. This is a team that's like they're not. If they continue to drop, they have to address that in some way, shape, or form.
And we know David Poyle isn't shy about making a deal. So
he's not shy, and he's a long-term man. He's not like a short-term GM, which is why, like when I said before, Forsberg's play, whether they follow the playoffs doesn't affect whether they sign Forsberg as much as I think that Forsberg's more of the long-term thing for Poyle, and Poyle doesn't just do it. He's not as reactionary. It's not like if the Predators miss out on the playoffs at the last second or out of the playoffs by 1 point on trade deadline day, Forsberg's gone. I don't see that.
What we do know about the Predators is they want a second pairing defenseman.
They definitely want a second pairing defenseman. Okay, good to know. Here's a good one. Dylan Strome and the Calgary Flames. Another center situation. Calgary looking for centers, I've been told. Dylan Strome and Calgary. When I first heard it, I'm like, I don't know. But after a bit, I was like, that would really be a heck of a fit. I think he would bring a whole nother element to that center position that they don't really have.
Yeah, I mean, he's not putting up bad offensive numbers this year. With the Hawks,
right?
But Russ, I mean, ever since he was drafted, we've questioned his speed, and and maybe Calgary is the perfect fit because that whole team is slow except for Gaudreau and a couple others.
Like the only hesitancy I would have here is, if you've given up on Sean Monahan, but you feel optimistic about Dylan Strome, I would rethink that. If you're just getting Dylan Strome because you don't think Monahan could ever play again, fine, then do that. Because when I've seen Monahan in a couple of games move to a different line, he does pretty well. I think he's being misused there. That's my personal feeling. But again, I
think there's an issue with Monahan and Sutter. I think there is. It feels like it might not be personal, it's just a style.
No, it's just not working out.
It might be the style thing, which makes you wonder a little bit about Giroux, who's not that different than Monahan stylistically, right? But do you better than Monahan,
But do you think with the success that Calgary is having right now that they would rock the boat by trading Monahan in season, or I would think that they would wait until after the year to make a move?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I think this is more a rental type situation. I mean, he's an RFA, so Dylan Strome's not like a complete rental, but he's only he's $3 million right now, right? And he's an RFA next year.
Yeah, but he's a center and he's got some numbers. He's going to make like 4.5.
Yeah. But Calgary's got their share of cap space next year coming off. They do have some cap space. They don't have a ton. We talked about them a lot. Kevin, any thoughts on that one?
On Strome?
Yeah.
Well, I actually think he would fit there with Sutter for sure. But I agree with that they wouldn't trade Monahan in the middle of the season here. They got a team that's going well. Things are clicking. So I don't know. That doesn't seem like something they would do. Like Toffoli was a definite need. There was some guy that Sutter had history with, really believed in him. I think he pretty much engineered that trade. More so than the general manager did, just because he wanted it. So I don't know. I just don't see them doing would do that now.
Now, just quickly, because I heard both these two names mentioned in trade rumors, and I don't know whether how realistic they are. One was both from Chicago. One was Calvin DeHaan, who's a rental. He's making over $4 million, but he's been healthy this year. And the other is Connor Murphy, and that one makes no sense because they just signed him to a 4-year extension. So I would think that they wouldn't trade a guy they just signed to a 4-year extension right off, but they would trade a guy who's a rental and who's been hurt for most of the time that he's been in Chicago. So I could see DeHaan. DeHaan is the type of sort of mid-level move like Toronto would make.
He's on my rumor chart, but I don't have him yet with a team associated. I just have him. I have 40% chance that he stays in Chicago. That's what I have right now. So yeah, that means I do think he'll get moved, but not. I don't have a specific area yet. I haven't heard a team.
Right.
Similar to Robert Hagg. You know, I think.
And he's a cheap salary too.
Yeah, I think those two are due. Do either of those, Calvin Hahn and Robert Hagg, fit Nashville's needs, Kevin? You know, we're talking about.
Good point.
Yeah, no, I mean they could be. You know, I don't know whether they've actually looked at those two, but you know they want just more of a veteran presence right now. They feel like they're relying a lot on inexperienced players in that second group. So
I mean, look, and again, I'll throw this out there. If I'm Kyle Dubas, knowing how DeHaan and Tavares have played together in the past, I have to think about it.
That's a great point. It's a great point. I really like the idea of Hagg in Nashville. I haven't heard it either, but someone out there is going to get a steal if they pick up Robert Hagg at this deadline.
Yeah, he can play. There's no question.
He's gonna be really surprised. When he plays per minutes played, he's like, if not the top hitting defenseman in the league, one of them.
But how high in your lineup can you play him?
He can play in your second pairing. He can
be a 4. He can.
Yeah, he's a 4, but I mean, ideally,
that's not his regular position, but he can do it.
Ideally, he's a 5 or 6. But the thing that he brings, though, is he's defense first, which is nice to have. You know, like it's a nice thing to have. Secondly, he hits everything that moves. He's not just a hitter. He's a brutal hitter. Like he's a clean hitter. Like he's never been suspended or anything like that. But he does hit crazy hard, and players do look up when he's on the ice. You know, they don't like playing against him. I thought he was a great pickup for the Buffalo Sabres. I thought, that would work perfectly, but yeah. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone, and happy Monday. We're 2 weeks away from the trade deadline. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you all tomorrow.